We talked a fair amount yesterday about Kevin Stefanski's comments that Shedeur Sanders was not getting first-team reps right now. And it's interesting how this, like every other conversation, has blown up and taken on a life of its own. You were kind of like, okay, this makes sense. My thing was, I think the Browns are treating a very untraditional, non-traditional situation with two rookie quarterbacks you're trying to get ready at the same time in a traditional way. And I think that bears examination. So I think it's been interesting to watch some fans get frustrated. Mary Kay Capite, we don't even have to play the full audio on this. She was talking about the Browns and talking about how much this team has going for it, including having Quinshon Judkins. And then she referred to the Browns' defense. I thought it was interesting because she said that the Browns have a championship caliber defense. And I know that the Browns their defense has flashed some very dominant moments. But it was interesting when she said that, it sent off something in my head, kind of signaling that maybe I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but for you, I guess we first should define what is a championship caliber defense in your opinion.
Oh, good, because I wanted that definition as well. I'm thinking of like the type of team when you get to the Super Bowl, you're talking about the defense more than you are the offense. So, like for instance, I'm not, because there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of defenses that you can win the Super Bowl with. The Chiefs in the first year that Mahomes won, there was like the 18th ranked defense in the NFL. Like they were allowing a lot of points. And we've seen defenses in the past be with really good offenses and it not be relative to what you saw the past couple years with the Chiefs, where they entered with top 10 defenses. And at times you can make an argument we're better than the offensive side of the ball.
So I'm glad you said this, because I also think a championship caliber, I think of like the Ravens when they won their first Super Bowl. I think of I can't remember which Pittsburgh Steelers team, but one of those,
like the
those
first
two teams.
3 Super Bowls with the Patriots.
Yes, like when as much as you might, certainly the Russell Wilson led Seattle Seahawks with a Legion of Boom.
Yeah.
Like, and by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a historic defense. But yes, that's the upper caliber part of this. I just think like a top 5 defense, which means top 5 in pass rush, top 5 in run defense, top 5 in turnovers, like where you're just across the board consistently top 5. And so I think the Browns have a chance here to end up the season as a top 10 defense. They might even be able to, in certain categories, certainly pass rush, be able to be top 5. The thing that I debated with and still debate with is whether they're championship caliber to the letter of the law that I think you and I are talking about.
Well, so last week was a good step in the idea that they actually got 4 turnovers. You know, like last year, for that defense to only have 4 interceptions for the entire season was laughably low. So they're starting to do some of the things that we would talk about within this concept. What's interesting, Nick, is that the advanced metrics, DVOA loves this Browns defense. 5th overall in the NFL. They love them way more than if you look at just points per game, for instance. So there's certain elements of this team that really does flash, and they have some big games attached to them. Once again, they shut down Joe Burrow. Like, they have some moments that you can look at and say, this is awesome. And you also have some games like week 2 against the Ravens. You also have some games like you saw against the Lions where it looked like Jared Goff could have put up 70 if he wanted to. And that's where I kind of struggle with naming them a championship defense.
Yeah, against the best teams, they've been okay at points, and they've also gotten blown out. Now, in fairness, I think the offense has led to the blowouts more than the defense has. But I think that's why, like, when Mary Kay said championship caliber defense, my initial reaction was, And that's not to demean them, because it's week 7 going on week 8. Like, you don't have to be a championship caliber defense this late in the season. You can grow into that as the season goes along, right? If you get health in the right breaks, I do think defenses can continue to get better as the season goes along. The problem here is going to be you're going to be fighting what does the offense give you, and you're going to be put in precarious situations because of the offense. But like, to be, at least DVOA, a top 5 defense or the 5th best defense with this offense, I think is an incredible mark in the, hey, we might have one. I just think I need to see more. I need to see them against Drake May. I need to see them, against Lamar. I need to see them in matchups where you're the only chance that you really have to win in that game. and then you go win that game.
Yeah, like the Packers game, for instance.
Yeah.
The Packers game, that was a defense win game. Like, they won that game. You did everything you needed to do against Jordan Love. You held their offense in check the entire game, and you did just enough for Joe Flacco to put up 13 points to win the game. Like that's a defense win game.
And I would say, I think to be a championship caliber defense,
you got to have 4 or 5 of those throughout the season?
Yeah, well, and by the way, that's if you have a good offense. If you don't have a good offense, you might have to put up 6 of those kind of games, which isn't necessarily fair, but it's the NFL. None of this is fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like some of the better defenses with just absolute nothing burgers of offense in recent years. And it's kind of funny if you just kind of like go through that process, because most of the time, even when you have really good defenses, we find at least a semblance of a quarterback on the other side that you can kind of make some bread with.
Do you think they have?
I think it's just really hurting this team in a way that I don't love. Listen, we like the soup can. We like what the development there, but I'm not sold that's a thing that's going to exist for all the rest of this season.
I also think you're thin at safety.
Yeah.
Behind Hickman and Delpit. I think your linebackers are really, really young. And I think just in general, like, even your defensive line, as deep as it is, Mason Graham's a rookie. Isaiah McGuire's a third-year guy. Like, you still have enough youth on defense, which is not a bad thing. But if you have some obvious glaring, I don't say issues, but places where you're not as strong as maybe the defensive line, I think that, and by the way, we're saying that at 100%.
Yeah, what's funny is that the Browns are 13th in pressure rate. You would have thought that they just assumed with the defensive line in the season this defensive line is having so far, and obviously I throw Malik Collins in the mix, Isaiah McGuire, Alex Wright, we'll throw Mason Graham in there, and then obviously Miles. You'd think they'd have a much better number than that. Like last year, they had a high pressure rate last year, and they didn't have enough sacks. Like that was the difference there. It was like a high pressure rate, but they were for large parts of last year in the 20s when it came to sacks. What's interesting about this year, the pressure rate numbers aren't there for what you think it would be.
Yeah, and I also think some of that is I think defenses, especially over the last couple of weeks, has really started to just key in and just get the ball out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Tua does that better than just about anybody, and you saw that on display.
Well, but that I
even if it went to our hands,
I think
he was getting rid of it awfully quick.
I think in general, there's a lot about that game that you throw out, except that. The one thing they did that should have worked but didn't was getting the ball out quickly. 216-474-0092. Do the Browns have a championship caliber defense?
I mean, doesn't that kind of stink, though, if you can say you have a championship caliber defense and you have two, but if you have something that Mary Kay, again, you obviously say you don't believe that, but if something Mary Kay believes is a championship caliber defense, and at the end of the season you have 5 or 6 wins to show for it. We did a Joe Woods year that was very similar to that, by the way. That does just, again, I'm not breaking anything new here. It's just offense matters so much in football.
Well, it matters so much. It matters to this point. You can't have an unfunctional offense in the NFL.
And that's what this team has been. They've been not only non-functional as on offense, it's been just a really, I mean, we're
you had the 18th best offense, be it by scoring or whatever metric you want to use. Mm-hmm. Right now, you'd probably be 5-2, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different. I can make a case. I can make a legitimate case that if you just had a middle of the pack offense with this defense and what they delivered, especially in the first 4 weeks. Where it's, I mean, take the Ravens game aside, but just losing the Bengals game by a point, and then the Vikings game by 4, there was enough games in there for sure. There were,
and this is when it comes down to what I think the Browns, why it matters for the Browns, and why we're having this conversation is, I think there's this idea that this offseason is about going, full bore and just throw every resource at solely the offense. And listen. You need a quarterback, you need a left tackle, you need to spend on a couple offensive linemen. I still think you need to be pretty diligent in making sure you can get that 1 or 2 extra pieces to give that defense maybe that extra little bump it needs on top of having a better offense. The extra 1 or 2 pieces will make the difference for this defense, and I don't think we're that far from championship caliber overall, though.
Yeah, but I'm curious to find out how they do that, because first 2 picks this year off the board, obviously defensive side of the ball, but then you did get to the offense with Quinshawn. I'm curious if they just go offense, and just continue down that road and kind of just reverse the course essentially.
I think it's tough to say without knowing okay, who are the free agents, who are the tradable players that are out there between now and obviously the draft. Listen, if you've got 4 picks in the top 100, right? 3 of those picks are probably going to be quarterback, left tackle, and wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 4th one can be another cornerback. The 4th one can be I probably don't. I don't know if you need another linebacker. We'll see, but like maybe another safety or an impact safety. Then just because you're going to go find that left tackle, and by the way, at this point, you might not be drafting a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't. A lot has changed. A lot has changed relative to what we all thought, and the quarterback landscape in the draft, as evidenced by the quarterback Deadpool, has shifted immensely.
It's going to be really interesting whether, even if they're in a position to take a quarterback, whether they're inclined to trade down, get another first for 2027, and then go a cornerback, left tackle, wide receiver, something like that, or defensive piece, and then 2 offensive pieces, and then bring in like a Mac Jones or a veteran quarterback, whoever it is, just to try and stabilize this thing further next year. 216-474-0092. Do the Browns have a championship caliber defense? I can see why Mary Kay says so. I think we're just below that, but I think it's tough to say when you have the offense that the Browns have. Pete Futek, will Ohio State lose in the regular season? Pete answers that question in 5 minutes on 92.3 The Fan. Hey, guys.